Mataji, so we'll wait for some time before we start.
Mataji, yes, Mataji, because I started, I wanted to send the link out.
Yeah, you can wait for.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt. So should we start now? Okay.
Yes, Mataji, we can start.
So thank you all so much for joining us today. Nice to have everyone on the call. We are continuing our study of Sri Isopanishad, and we have Vivek Prabhuji with us, who will be covering verse number 8 in Sri Isopanishad. So thank you so much, Prabhu. We are very, very happy to be here from you. Thank you so much. You can take over the call.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Firstly, I would like to thank Grace Priti Vilasni Mataji for giving me an opportunity to study Srila Prabhupada's book and also share whatever I have learned with everyone. So we are going to solely concentrate on Srila Prabhupada's purport today, and also grateful to Grace Gaurang Darshan Prabhu for his wonderful notes from the Isopanishad Subodhani that he has written, which is essentially jotting down points from Srila Prabhupada's books. So we'll begin by the Mangalacharan prayers. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashyatya Desatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauravakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So in the last few classes, devotees have been presenting the first 7 verses of the Isopanishad. So we'll quickly summarize the last maybe couple of verses, which are essentially related to what we are going to discuss today, the 8th verse. So in verse 6, we talked about the 3 different types of devotees who tries to see God everywhere. Which kind of a devotee will actually see God everywhere? So we discussed that there are 3 types of devotees: Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttamadhikari. And we discussed what are the attributes or what are the characteristics of each category of devotees. And it is the Uttamadhikari or the Mahabhagavad devotee who actually sees the Supreme Lord everywhere. He doesn't differentiate between an animal or a human being. He sees Supreme Lord in each and every living entity, exhibiting all the characteristics of an Uttamadhikari. And only such a Uttamadhikari can actually see the Supreme Lord everywhere. Like Krishna mentions in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that a person who sees him or Krishna everywhere is very dear to Krishna. Yomam Pashyati Sarvatra. He mentions that such a person is very dear to Krishna. So that is an Uttamadhikari devotee. And we saw in the 7th verse, after we saw that, what was the 7th verse? I'm just trying to recollect. The 7th verse was, the qualitative oneness of such an Uttamadhikari devotee can only see oneness in everything. Oneness means not that everything merges and becomes 1 or 0, according to the impersonal philosophy, but oneness means in qualitative oneness. So like there is this famous saying that universal brotherhood, and that can only be seen by an Uttamadhikari devotee or a Mahabhagavad devotee, because he sees that the Jiva or the Supreme Lord is one qualitatively one in nature, but quantitatively they are different. Like Srila Prabhupada gives the different analogy of say a fire and a spark. It has the same propensity of heat or light in it, but the intensity varies, right? The spark has the same propensity, but the intensity varies. And similarly, the ocean and the drop of water from the same ocean has the same salt propensity in it, salty propensity in it, but the amount of salt in it differs. The ocean has much more than probably a drop of water from the same ocean. So that is our nature. So that Uttamadhikari devotee can clearly see, but he is able to see that. And Prabhupada mentions that one has to be at least in the stage of Madhyamadhikari in order to differentiate this oneness category. And then Uttamadhikari or Mahabhagavat devotee can actually see the real unity in diversity, which Prabhupada wonderfully explains that the real unity in diversity is bringing Krishna in the center. By bringing Krishna in the center in our lives, we can actually be united. And he mentions that our real purpose in life is to go and participate in. Prabhupada doesn't waste time. He says our only aim in life is to be servants of Srimati Radharani. He indirectly mentions that in the purport of the 7th verse. That should be our goal in life, and that is what Srila Prabhupada has come to given us, to be the servants of Srimati Radharani, indirectly in the purport of 7. And today, in connection with the 6th and 7th verse, where we talked about the vision of a Uttamadhikari or a Mahabhagavat devotee, such a devotee or a Uttamadhikari devotee can actually see the God's eternal qualities. We cannot, at practicing stage, at my stage, I cannot really perceive the Lord's eternal qualities, even though I may open up Srimad Bhagavatam book and try to understand the purports of the Acharyas. But when we hear from the Uttamadhikari devotee, we can actually perceive the Lord's eternal qualities. And that is what we are going to discuss today. It's a very wonderful purport that Srila Prabhupada has written. He's made it very easy for all of us to understand. He has put every word of the verse, and he has given an explanation and some examples for us to understand and relate to it. So the verse goes like this. Saparyagat shukram akayam abrinam ashnaviram shuddham apapa viddam kavir manisi paribu swayambur yatha tatyato arthan vyadadat chashvatibhya samabhyah. Such a person or Uttamadhikari devotee must factually know the greatest of all, the personality of Godhead, who is embodied, unembodied, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure, uncontaminated, the self-sufficient philosopher, who has been fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. So the characteristics of the Supreme Lord is actually given. And Srila Prabhupada begins the purport. If all of us have the purport in front of us, he begins the purport by saying that this verse clearly states and shows us that the Lord is not impersonal. That's how he begins. He begins the purport saying that the Lord is a person. He's not an impersonal aspect. Like because when somebody reads the verse, just by reading the translation, we can get bewildered, because it says the Supreme Lord is without veins. So according to our perception, we have veins in our body. But does that mean that the Supreme Lord is not somebody like us? He is some form of light or something? So that's where Srila Prabhupada actually wonderfully writes the purport, and he gives examples for each, and definitions and examples for each and every word of important critical words of this 8th verse. So first we will see that Prabhupada writes is Akayam and without veins, Ashnaviram. So 2 words, unembodied and without veins. And Srila Prabhupada explains that the Supreme Lord does not have a material form, right? Because in the word, in the translation, it states that he is without veins. So does it mean that he doesn't have form? No. Srila Prabhupada mentions that the Supreme Lord has a spiritual form. He's not formless, but he has a spiritual form, and he's not forced into the material nature like us. Like Karanam Guna Sangasya. We are all bound by our karmic activities. And based on our karmic activities, we get a different body, life after life. But the Supreme Lord is not like that. He is not bound by any of the three modes of the material nature, or even the material mode itself. Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. He mentions the material mode is under my control. The Supreme Lord is the one who's controlling the material nature. So he cannot be bound by the material nature. So he cannot get a material form. That's what Srila Prabhupada mentions. And his body is how? His body is Sachidananda Vigraha. Just like how the Jiva is also Sachidananda Vigraha. Similarly, like in quality, we are one with the Supreme Lord. So the Supreme Lord's body, mind, and himself are all one. So there is no, the Supreme Lord's body doesn't have the material elements like how we have, made of earth, water, fire, or ether. So that's how Srila Prabhupada begins trying to explain these two terminologies, Akayam and Ashnaviram. And we can relate to one of the verses that Gajendra actually speaks in similar lines, much parallel to this two words that we are trying to understand here. Gajendra mentions, Na vidyate yasya cha janma karma va nanama rupe gunadosha eva va tatapi lokapya Peya sambhavaya swamayatanam manukalam richyati tasmai nama pareshaya brahmanenanta shaktaye arupaya rupaya nama asharya karmane. He mentions arupaya rupaya. So Gajendra is also praying. He's not directly addressing the Supreme Lord as Krishna or one of his plenary expansions. He's saying the Supreme Lord has, this is how he's calling out to the Supreme Lord when he's under the clutches of the crocodile. He's saying the Supreme Lord has no material birth, no name, no form, no qualities or faults. To fulfill the purpose for which this material world is created and destroyed, he comes in the form of a human being like Lord Rama or Lord Krishna by his original internal potency. He has immense potency and in various forms, all free from material contamination. He acts wonderfully. He's therefore the Supreme Brahman. I offer my respects to him. This is how Gajendra prays. And he also prays exactly on the same lines, that the Supreme Lord has no form, which means that he doesn't have Prabhupada writes in that purport that the Supreme Lord doesn't have a material form. He has a spiritual form. And Prabhupada also mentions in that purport that although the Lord appears to act within the modes of the material nature, he is nirguna. Nirguna means he's above the modes, like we discussed. He is not clutched by the three modes of material nature. A jiva, when he is within this material world, as soon as he comes in contact with the material world, we are all put into the three strings of goodness, passion, and ignorance. But the Supreme Lord is not like that. Prabhupada, in order to understand this in a very easy way, he gives us example that we all as practicing devotees can relate to. He says, otherwise, how one can get liberation by chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Rama? The names of Lord like Rama and Krishna are non-different from the person Rama and Krishna. Thus, by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, one constantly associates with Lord Rama or Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore becomes liberated. A practical example is Ajamil, who always remained transcendental to his activities simply by chanting the name Narayana. If this was true of Ajamil, what is said to be of the Supreme Lord? This is how Prabhupada beautifully explains for us to easily understand that if the Supreme Lord was material, how is that we are chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra for quite a number of times in so many years, and we are benefiting out of it. And in the past, the acharyas have shown that what are the supreme benefits of chanting the Hare Krishna Mantra. So the Lord was truly material. Whatever we are doing cannot be true. Our practice is totally invalid. Prabhupada defeats that ideology that the Supreme Lord is covered under the material nature by giving practical examples that we all can understand in a very relatable way. And the other parallel that we can understand is that there is a beautiful sloka from Srimad Bhagavatam which states that the Mahabhagavad devotees are also nirguna. How is that? Etadishanamishasya prakritistobi tatgunai na yujyate sadatmastair yata buddhistadashrayah This is the divinity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not affected by the qualities of material nature, which we saw now, but even though he is in contact with them. Similarly, the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord do not become influenced by the material qualities. So this is the quality of an Uttamadhikari devotee. A Mahabhagavad devotee is also not under the clutches of the material nature. He is also transcendental. Actually, there is one more sloka, I don't remember the exact reference, probably in the first or the second canto, which exactly states that the pure devotees of the Lord are also transcendental. Similar to how the Supreme Lord is transcendental, the pure devotees of the Lord are also transcendental. There is an exact verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. So we can take examples of the six Goswamis or our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. They're all pure Mahabhagavad devotees, and we can clearly see from their lives that they were not under any stage during their lives under the clutches of the three modes, under any circumstance. And in this very purport of 1:11:38, Srila Prabhupada gives example of the six Goswamis of Vrindavan. He says the great six Goswamis of Vrindavan all came from greatly rich and aristocratic families. But when they adopted the life of the mendicants at Vrindavan, superficially they appeared to be in rest conditions of life. But factually they were the richest of all in spiritual values. Tyaktva turnam ashesha mandalapati Shrinim sada tuchavat. They gave away all their material things. They were millionaires, right? But they gave up everything. But Srila Prabhupada writes they were richest in all in spiritual values. Even though it may appear from an outwardly point of view that they had nothing, they just wore some copan and they were chanting and they were trying to propagate Krishna consciousness all over. They were the richest of all in spiritual values. Such Mahabhagavad devotees or first grade devotees, although moving amongst normal men, are not contaminated by honor or insult, hunger or satisfaction, sleep or wakefulness, which are all resultant actions of the three modes of material nature. We can see from the life of our dear Srila Prabhupada, we have heard several of his pastimes where Srila Prabhupada is always awake in the night time. He hardly had 2 to 3 hours of sleep every day. And he used to translate Srimad Bhagavatam, which is clear indication that he's not under the modes of the three modes of material nature. He's nirguna, right? So that is the type of Mahabhagavad devotees that we are looking at, and we can see and we can perceive there are several Srila Prabhupada disciples who are also in this category of nirguna. And the next word that Srila Prabhupada explains is the Supreme Lord is omnipotent and omniscient, Shukram and Kavi. So omnipotent means Srila Prabhupada gives examples that with each and every part of his body, the Lord can do many other things. Just like we are limited, with hands we can do only certain things, with legs we can do only certain things. For the Supreme Lord, he can walk with his hands, he can eat with his eye, like how when we offer the bhoga to the deities at home or in the temple with love and devotion, the Supreme Lord accepts it. How does he accept it? He accepts it through his eyes. He can eat it. We have heard several pastimes in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, Raghunandan Das Thakur, so many pastimes we have heard where the Supreme Lord actually accepts the bhoga that we offer through his eyes. So that's one of the ways that he is omnipotent and omniscient. He is knower of everything. We can see from Bhagavad Gita, Vedaham samatitani vartamani cha Arjuna, bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedana kashana. O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, present and future and yet to come. And I also know all living entities, but me, no one knows. This is how Krishna explains that he is the knower of everything. He knows everything that's going to happen to us. And he knows what has happened to us in previously also. He mentions this to Arjuna. You don't remember everything that has happened to you, but I remember. Because when Arjuna asks in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, how can you say that you actually preached to the sun god many millions of years ago? For that, Krishna explains, the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna explains that to Arjuna that you don't remember many things, what has happened to you in your past lives, but I remember everything. That supports the statement in the 7th chapter that the Supreme Lord actually speaks to Arjuna. And omnipotence, there are other examples. Deity form, right? The deity form of the Lord, Srila Prabhupada explains, is the Archaevigra. Archaevigra form of the Lord in the temple is non-different from the Lord, right? And he gives two different ways that the Lord can actually appear to us. He can convert, because the Archaevigra form is actually made of material elements according to our mundane vision. It is made of the recommended materials that is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto. But even though it is just made of material elements, the Supreme Lord decides to descend into that material element by the call of his pure devotee. I was hearing His Grace Radhesham Prabhu, he was mentioning several examples. We can hear that when we have devotees, when we have deities at home or in the temple, and if we don't serve them well for a period of time, what will happen is the Supreme Lord will think that he doesn't want to serve me, he or she doesn't want to serve me well. We may have deities at home, but if we don't serve them well regularly, by not just offering food, by singing for them, by fanning for them, by performing kirtan for them, because the Supreme Lord has decided to come and accept our service at home or in the temple. So what will happen is, if we don't do this for some time, the Supreme Lord will decide to move away from us. And this is exactly what Radhesham Prabhuji mentioned, the example of Madhavendra Puri. When he actually saw the deity, he didn't actually see the deity. Krishna actually came in his dream, stating that you have to come and find me in Vrindavan, and you have and I'll take up. You can take me, you can find me, and you can render service unto me. And just by Srila Madhavendra Puri going and performing these services, all over Vrindavan, everyone starts coming. As soon as a pure devotee comes, and Krishna accepts his service, that form becomes an Archaevigra form, right? And it's not different from the Lord. And as soon as he starts serving, entire Vrindavan serves, and the whole neighboring villages of Vrindavan, people start coming, and they have a festival for almost a year or two in Vrindavan. That is the power of a pure devotee. When the Lord accepts to come and descend in the Archaevigra form, he comes to accept that devotee's service. And that's when he converts the matter into spirit. And the Lord can do the other way also. He can convert spirit into matter. How? The same Archaevigra form, if a person is totally ignorant of the scriptures, and if that person is a Kanishtadhikari, that Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, because he has material eyes, he doesn't have the vision. We will see why a devotee cannot have a vision. A devotee is going to temple chanting Hare Krishna, but we are not having the vision. When we go in front of the deities, what do we see? Right? One famous disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he says, standing in front of the deity is not we taking the darshan of the deities. The deity is to be seen. Standing in front of the deity is to be seen, not to see the deities. How to develop that consciousness, right? It's a very advanced consciousness that this disciple of Srila Prabhupada is talking about, is to be seen by the deity. And if we don't have that consciousness, we will just see a material element. And that's what Srila Prabhupada is saying. The Supreme Lord can make a person see the Archaevigra form as matter. But actually, he's spiritual. He's not different from Krishna and Srimati Radharani. He's standing right in front of us. Nitai Gaur Sundar and Jagannath Baladev Subhadramai. Everybody are there right in front of us, but we don't have the consciousness to see. But how to develop that consciousness? Right? And we will discuss that at the end of today's discussion, how to develop that consciousness. And some of the examples, like we can see the washerman at the entrance of Mathura, right? He was actually washing the clothes of King Kamsa, and when Krishna and Balaram and the cowherd boys enter into Mathura, they actually try to ask this washerman to give some clothes for them to enter into Mathura, because Kamsa had invited Krishna and Balaram on the request of Akrura. And the washerman denies him, and he speaks very offensively to Krishna, right? And this is a typical example of being totally ignorant. The Supreme Lord can be right in front of us. There's several examples like this. Duryodhan, Shishupal, right? They saw the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna so many times in front of them. But because they were totally envious, several times mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, if we have enviousness within our heart, even though the Lord comes in right in front of us, we cannot perceive him. It's impossible because Krishna will not reveal himself. It is also mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the entire Yadu dynasty. Very few people knew that Krishna was actually the Supreme Lord. Not everyone could perceive that Krishna was the Supreme Lord in the Yadu dynasty. And from such a dynasty, Kunti Maharani was there. And then we can also see the total opposite of the Yajna Patnis, the same Srimad Bhagavatam. And they were totally opposite. They didn't know the Shastra. They didn't memorize slokas. They didn't attend morning Bhagavatam classes. All they did was hear about Krishna from the Vrajavasis. And simply by this powerful hearing factor, they developed this attraction towards Krishna automatically. We discussed last time when we were discussing Yasyam vai Shuyamanayam Krishne Paramapurushe Bhakti Rutpadete Pumsa Shoka Moha Bhayapaha. Simply by hearing Krishna's pastimes regularly every single day, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. That's why Srila Prabhupada has given us Srimad Bhagavatam to read every single day, hear Srimad Bhagavatam every single day. By doing the simple thing of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and chanting Hare Krishna, one will develop attraction towards Krishna very quickly. Right? And this is what the Yajnapatni did. They simply heard. They simply heard of Krishna's pastimes from the Rajavasis, and totally opposite their husbands, they were simply busy in some Vedic sacrificial rituals. So because they were simply doing things mechanically, they couldn't understand the heart of their wives. And Krishna actually gave them mercy, gave the mercy to the wives of the Brahmanas, but the Brahmanas actually didn't get the mercy to actually get the darshan of Krishna. Because when the Gopas came and told the Yajnapatnis that he wants some food, they were going mad after going to find where Krishna and Balaram are. Dhruva Maharaj explains in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that let me always have the association of your pure devotees so that I can become mad after hearing your pastimes. Let me go mad. This is what he explains. And this is what Srila Prabhupada has come to give us. Satatam kirtayanto mam. How can it happen? We have to go mad every single day without hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Our hands should start shaking. I'm missing something today. I have to hear Srimad Bhagavatam today. And that's how the Yajnapatnis were actually feeling when they heard the cowherd voice. They wanted to run to see Krishna and Balaram. We should run. We may not physically run. We should run to Srimad Bhagavatam class, at least mentally. If you are not able to run physically, we should run mentally to a Srimad Bhagavatam class. We have so many recordings. And about the deity form, this is another, why deity worship is so important. Why is it so important? We are just chanting Hare Krishna. We are actually hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. But why did Srila Prabhupada put a lot of emphasis, especially to Grihasthas, for deity worship? He mentions deity worship is important. Why? There are two different ways of approaching the Supreme Lord. One is the Bhagavat Marg, the other is Pancharatriki Vidhi. Bhagavat Marg is hearing and chanting. But the Pancharatriki Vidhi is the method of temple worship. Srila Prabhupada always recommended his disciples or whoever is following in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara to follow both in parallel. We need to follow both the lines in parallel. One cannot live without the other. Because Srila Prabhupada writes in one of his purports, by performing deity worship regularly, our tendency towards material attraction will gradually go away. And if we stop the deity worship, what will happen is we will start exploring other things which will gratify our senses. Srila Prabhupada even gives examples: cinema theater, movies, songs, many examples he gives. But as soon as we do deity worship, okay, Amrinda Prabhu mentioned in one of the classes, when we decorate Krishna, we lose the propensity to decorate ourselves. This is natural. This will happen to all of us. If we see the temple, why there is so much opulent decoration for the deities? It's quite natural. Again, an example of a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he mentions in New Vrindavan in many years ago, like 40, 50 years ago, all the devotees, they didn't have clothing like us. At least Grihasthas here, we wear different colored type of clothing, but they were literally suffering in New Vrindavan many years ago. And they were just sharing some sheets of bed sheets and wearing as saris and dhotis and that kind of a situation they were. So when they actually saw the Shringar Darshan in the morning, they will be, because they are not seeing anything that is opulent around them. They don't have any experience of anything that is so beautiful around them. And they will be talking about that form of the Supreme Lord in that particular attire throughout the day while doing some other service, because it's imprinted in their eyes, because there is no other experience for them that is much more superior to what they have seen in the morning darshan. And they still talk, oh, 1974, this day morning Shringa darshan, Radha Vrindavan Chandra, Shri Radha Vrindavan Chandra was having this attire. That's the experience that they have, and that's deity worship is actually very powerful. We don't realize. It is actually powerful. It purifies our senses. And this is why Srila Prabhupada recommended this. And then the next one is, the Supreme Lord also maintains sanctions and reciprocates. And how does he maintain? Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kam. He maintains all the jivas, and the jivas are totally dependent on him. We are thinking we are independent. Due to our ahankara, vimudatma, we are, because of our false ego, we think, oh, I am the doer. But actually the Supreme Lord, through his different agents, he's actually maintaining us. He's supplying all the things that we need in our day-to-day life. And then he also he sanctions to everyone according to our own qualification. Prabhupada gives a beautiful analogy that if a person wants to become a high court judge, simply by desiring or getting the necessary qualifications to become a high court judge, we cannot become a high court judge. You still need to have the consent of the authority who can award the title of the high court judge. So which means that the Supreme Lord actually gives sanctions according to our qualification. Do I really deserve certain things in my life? Then he gives it, either material or spiritual. That's how it is. And we can quickly see an example of Maharaj Anga and Vena's example in Srimad Bhagavatam, that Maharaj Anga, he was having everything in his kingdom. And while he was doing sacrifice, none of the demigods came and accepted his sacrifice. And when he asked what is happening, the Brahmanas told him that it is because you have done some, not in this life, in your previous life, you have done some sinful activities. So then because of that, he wished to have a son. And what happened? Maharaj Anga was a pure devotee. But what finally he got? He got a son who was totally demoniac. King Venam totally, Maharaj Anga came to such a situation in his life that he repented. Why did I even wish to have a son? We cannot understand the Supreme Lord's inconceivable sanctions to a devotee. Sometimes we think, oh, why these things are happening in our life, right? So Supreme Lord gives, because unless we go through pain, we will not surrender. We will not take out the Supreme Lord's names by taking shelter, because we need to take shelter. If everything goes our way, we cannot take shelter in anything in devotional service. And then the next example is unworthy and worthy aspiration. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, asking unworthy aspiration, like asking for too many material things with no one-pointed intelligence. Srila Prabhupada explains, Vyavashayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana bahushakahi anantasya buddhayo vyavasayinam, he explains. That if our intelligence is diverse, then we cannot have a one-pointed focus on our goal. That's one of Srila Prabhupada's favorite verse, right? So we can see Chitraketu Maharaj doing the same thing. That he was having everything. Again, he was a big king. He had millions of wives. He had so much opulence. He was a ruler of the entire planet. But still, he was missing something in his life. He wanted a son, right? And everybody knows what happened after that. He was given the benediction to have a son, But the sun will be will also cause happiness, and he will also cause distress. So he was named Harshashoka. And everybody knows what happened to Chitraketu Maharaj. After that, his son died, and because of his son's demise, Srila Narad Muni and Angira Muni came and awakened him. His son also, through their mercy, his own son who actually left his body, came back and actually spoke to him. And that's when he woke up. Right? This is what Srila Prabhupada, whenever he quotes, whenever the Supreme Lord sees his dear devotee getting diverted in his spiritual journey, he stops, catches hold of the devotee and pulls everything away from him. That's the ultimate mercy that Krishna can give to a devotee, is snatching away all the devotee has, so that that devotee will come closer to him. Right? This is our acharyas explain that this is the ultimate mercy that Krishna can give any devotee. So we should never be sad for things that are not going in our way. And worthy aspiration is a jiva who knows his constitutional position to serve the Lord lovingly as his associate. The same Chitraketu Maharaj, due to an incident with Lord Shiva and Mother Parvati, was cursed to become a demon. And how many of us want to become a demon? If you ask me, I don't even want to be with materialistic people, and this person is cursed to become a demon. Right? But because he was realized at that point in time, he took this curse as a benediction from the Supreme Lord. And even after this long chapters of this wonderful chapters describing about pure devotional service, he was finally defeated by Indra. And how? He was defeated by Indra, and Indra was cutting his head, not for 1 hour, not for 2 hours, for 1 whole year. Can we believe it? For 1 whole year, Indra was actually cutting, using the Narayana Astra, cutting Vritrasura's head. We can't even imagine. But what state was Vritrasura at that point in time? He was in Samadhi. Krishna, you can kill me. You can do anything to me. He was at the highest stage of pure devotional service. Like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains in the last verse of the Shikshashtakam. He was in the last pure stage of his devotional service. So this is the state of a jiva who's doesn't matter what happens in his life. Another example of a Mahabhagavad devotee. He wants to serve the Lord no matter what. And the reciprocation aspect is yatha tatyataha, is Lord allows the forgetful jiva to continue in material life if the jiva wants to go to hell. But the same Lord, if the jiva wants to go back home, back to Godhead, Krishna does everything to help that person. We already spoke about the washerman, but immediately after that, what happened was, when the washerman was actually cut by Krishna because he spoke so offensively, Srila Prabhupada explains in another purport that when the Supreme Lord actually kills a demoniac person, he still gets benefited. He gets liberation to Brahmajyoti. So even killing by Krishna is a benediction. But what happens after that is a weaver comes in front of Krishna and Balaram, and he offers service to actually stitch lovely ornaments on their dresses that they got from this washerman who just died. And because this weaver does this very simple service to the Supreme Lord and his associates, Krishna actually gave him instant benediction that at this end of life, he will go back home, back to Godhead, to Vaikuntha, getting a Sarupya Mukti. And until he goes back, he will also have a lot of physical strength and great opulence while living in this material world. And the Supreme Lord continues his journey, and he sees a totally opposite. So we saw the washerman, he didn't mind, because the Supreme Lord can't take the free will of that person. If a jiva wants to go to hell, even going to Brahmajyoti, our Acharyas explains that it's non-different from being in hell. Why? Because we don't experience Ananda. Because Ananda, according to our Acharyas, can be experienced only when we are with the Supreme Lord, not even in Brahmajyoti. Because the Vaikunta planets and the Golok Vrindavan planets are beyond the Brahmajyoti realm. And we can experience Ananda, Sat Chit Ananda. We can experience bliss only with the Supreme Lord. So that's the reason why our Acharyas say that merging into the Supreme Lord or being in Brahmajyoti is not different from hellish condition. So the washerman wanted to be there. So the Supreme Lord cannot take a free will of a person, of a jiva. But the same incident, Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, Sri Balaram and his associates carry on their journey and they meet a florist named Sudama in Mathura before entering into the city of Kamsa. And he is so awestruck by taking darshan of Sri Krishna and Balaram, and he says, my forefathers and everyone in my family are delivered just by taking obeisances from you and taking your darshan. He's so happy seeing Krishna and Balaram. And he says, how may I offer you service? This is the first thing he asks. He doesn't ask, oh, I want this, I want that. Any service you ask me to render, I am ready to do this. This is his first statement coming out of his mouth. And just by the Supreme, there is no conversation. The Supreme Lord just glances and he understands what the Supreme Lord wants. These are transcendental things that we cannot perceive. And Sudama actually understands that the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna and Balaram actually want flower garlands. And he gives them flower garlands. And Supreme Lord blesses him and asks him, you ask anything you want, I'll give you. And he asks three wonderful things. He says, I just want unflinching devotion towards you. I want to always stay friends with devotees, friendship with devotees. And I want to be compassionate, transcendental compassion towards all living entities, not just philanthropic work, transcendental compassion. That is what our Srila Prabhupada came to give us. He wanted us to perceive and understand and practice Krishna consciousness under a bona fide spiritual master. And Prabhupada mentions, according to our capacity, try to give it to others. And this was Sudama's mood. And the next definition is, he is the greatest of all. He is Paribu. Srila Prabhupada explains, jivas are not equal to the Lord. If jivas are omnipotent and omniscient with the Lord, then they cannot beg for the so-called liberation. These are all very direct statements that we can understand. But the actual liberation means going back home, back to Godhead and serving Krishna unconditionally and his associates, dear associates, unconditionally. And we can see with the example of Indra. Indra became a pig due to a curse. But then when he was put back, when he was called back to become the king of the heavenly realm again, he was not ready to go. Right? That is our status. Because of the material attachments, even if so many sadhus, they say, when we hear to a sadhu, they cut through our material, they just by their sound vibration, they cut through all our material misconceptions that we have. But the material entanglements are so strong, we can understand through this example of Indra, that still even after a Mahabharata devotee like Srila Narad Muni coming and calling Indra, he didn't want to go. He was so much attached to his family of pigs and piglets and everything. And then Supreme Lord is self-sufficient and independent. He is Swayambhu. Right? These are simple examples that we can understand that the Supreme Lord is Swayambhu. Right? He is self-sufficient. Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, he carried Govardhan hill for various reasons. The Acharyas explain several reasons, but Supreme Lord didn't have to go through a weightlifting championship to show his awe. One of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada explains, Krishna didn't go to the center. I mean, today Govardhan hill is around 20 to 25 miles. I've heard. I'm not been fortunate to go to Vrindavan yet, but I'm hearing it's around 25 miles. But this disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he says Krishna didn't go to the center of the Govardhan hill, to pick it up on his pinky finger, and he didn't try to balance it so that he has to put it on the center of the Govardhan. Even if we take the most lightest object and try to balance it with our last finger, we cannot. But Krishna was able to do it because he has all the 6 opulences in full, according to the Vishnu Purana. He was able to do it. And we can see in the example of Ramayana, such wonderful things happened when the bridge was constructed by the Vanarasena. But how did the bridge stay afloat? Simply by the word of Lord Ram, imprint on it. And Acharya explains, there is a very deep understanding about this tattva of Lord Ram's names imprinted on these rocks. See, these are all divine things that we don't have any understanding about it unless we hear from our acharyas. They explain that by simply this material world we often hear is padam padam yet vipadam natesham. Every step is a danger. So if we apply the same analogy with these rocks, every step there needs to be the Lord's name on it. And as soon as every step there is no name of Lord Ram, the rock sinks and we sink within this material world. So which means that at every step we need to chant Krishna or Lord Krishna's names or Lord Ram's names. This is their vision. It's inconceivable. We cannot think like this. These are all revealed to the acharyas. At every step, that is the reason why Krishna mentions Sadatam Kirtayantoma. We may not be there yet, but this is what our acharyas want us to be. They want us to be in this place, this consciousness where we go mad after hearing Krishna's pastimes and constantly chant his holy names. Otherwise, we are immediately caught hold by the 3 strings of the material nature. This is the acharya's realization of this pastime. And that's how he's independent. He can do wonderful things. If we write our name even on a paper, the paper will not float. The paper may sink. And he is beyond reproach. Avranam. No one can disapprove his activities. Like we see when somebody talks about the rasa dance from the Srimad Bhagavatam, if we don't hear from the acharyas, we can get bewildered. But this doesn't mean that, doesn't matter whether I'm bewildered or not, this cannot disapprove the Supreme Lord's activities because they are always above the 3 modes. Srila Prabhupada, I was fortunate to hear this class of Srila Prabhupada maybe 2 to 3 years ago in the temple on Sri Radhashtami, on Srimati Radharani's appearance day. This is a very old class, 1968 or 69 lecture that Srila Prabhupada gave on Radhashtami, Srimati Radharani's appearance day. And he used a very easy way for a person like me who can understand how to understand this pastime. Srila Prabhupada mentions that even an impersonalist, a Mayavadi, or a person who is trying to get rid of all the material entanglements in this world, even for such a person, he has to give up all these mundane desires, lusty thoughts, lusty propensities, in order to go above the 3 modes of material nature. But even for such a person, he has to give up all these things. And what to speak of Krishna, who is already above the 3 modes? Why does he have to have these lusty feelings? It's a very simple thing, analogy to understand, right? All the jnanis of this creation are trying to get rid of all the bad propensities within them to find the absolute truth. Then why the absolute truth has to actually go through the same things with the jnanis are trying to give it up? It makes total sense, right? Prabhupada gives a very relatable example for all of us to understand that all these activities of Krishna are transcendental, and we can understand only by the Supreme Lord's mercy and through his bona fide parampara. Otherwise, we cannot understand these pastimes. And the Supreme Lord is supremely pure, Shuddham Apapa Viddham. He is like the antiseptic. And so even an impure thing can be purified by the Supreme Lord's presence or association. This is what Srila Prabhupada says. An often example that Srila Prabhupada gives is the sun, the analogy of the sun and something abominable, right? Urine or anything it can be. But just by the presence of the sun, everything gets evaporated, right? Similarly, by the presence or association of the Supreme Lord, everything becomes auspicious. And his pure association is so powerful that even if somebody commits an abominable act temporarily, like Sri Krishna mentions in the 9th chapter, 30th verse of the Bhagavad Gita, that Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport of this verse, that even if such a devotee apparently makes some mistakes, right, he becomes purified over a period of time if that devotee keeps in touch with Krishna and his devotees. We have seen in several examples, even within our movement, very popular examples that we don't have time to discuss. And there is this example of Devan and the Pundit in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. He was a scholar in Srimad Bhagavatam, and he used to teach many students. But Lord Chaitanya never gave him mercy, because he never spoke on the point of bhakti. And what happened was, once Srila Srivas Thakur, he was walking by Devananda Pandit's home, and as soon as he heard the syllables of Srimad Bhagavatam being spoken by someone, he was very curious. He went inside and he was hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and he immediately went into ecstasy and he fainted and fell down simply by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And the students of Devananda Pandit thought that, oh, this is some sentimental guy, and they started laughing. And Devananda Pandit, the offense that he made was he neglected the students' reactions, and this became an offense. And because of this fact, he never got the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went and he took sannyas, and then later Devananda Pandit, by his Sukriti, he got to meet Vakreshwar Pandit, who is a very, very dear associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it is mentioned that few days ago we had Vakreshwar Pandit's appearance, divine appearance day, and it's mentioned that he could chant and dance for 3 consecutive days, right? At least myself, I cannot dance even in temple for 5-10 minutes continuously, right? He can chant and dance for 72 hours. And like that, once he was in total ecstasy, there were people gathered around looking at him. He was in a different world, chanting and dancing. And he used to faint and get up and chant and dance. So because of that, Devananda Pandit came and he was doing menial service to him. How? He was wiping the dust on Vakreshwar Pandit's body. And as soon as he get up, and he used to, stop the crowd from disturbing him. And like this, he started doing menial service to Vakreshwar Pandit. And because of this menial service that he did to Vakreshwar Pandit, who was a pure devotee, eventually he got the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is what this word of purifying means, apapa viddham. How do we get purified? Not directly by contacting with Krishna. Of course, chanting helps, but how do we chant? That is given only by the association of Mahabhagavat devotees or sadhus or our Guru Varga, right? When we associate with divine personalities, they may also not be within this material world, but their sound vibration, again, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada mentions, the mercy of Srimati Radharani and the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna comes through the pure devotees. And he mentions that is the reason why when we actually try to give Srila Prabhupada's book to somebody, see, these are all divine realizations. We cannot even perceive these realizations. We get only a glimpse when we hear. He mentions that when we give a book to someone, a book of Srila Prabhupada that he has translated or written, we are actually giving the mercy of Srila Prabhupada to that person. Because when he actually reads, he directly associates with a Mahabhagavat devotee and his life transforms. So that's how the mercy of the Supreme Lord comes into this world, through the mercy of the Mahabhagavat devotees. And that's how our purification actually starts. And what is our position or hope? Because all this time we were discussing the vision of a Mahabhagavat devotee. I am not a Mahabhagavat devotee, I am just a practicing Kanishta Adhikari devotee. But what is our hope? Our hope is Anupashyati. We might have already seen this in the 6th verse, but just for my own understanding and purification, I am trying to repeat what other devotees have already spoken. Anupashyati. Because we cannot see and perceive these things or the qualities of the Supreme Lord by our naked eyes, because we don't have the vision, right? Because we still are conditioned by this material nature. But we should follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. This is what Srila Prabhupada says. And he writes this. This is one of my favorite verses, probably many devotees, because this captures the essence of why Srila Prabhupada is saying this. And he mentions this in his Jaladuta prayers. Evam janam nipatatim prabhavahi kupe kama bikama manuya prapatan prasangat kritvat masat surashina bhagavan grihita soham katam nu vishrije tava britya sevam. These are the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. And he prays to the Supreme Lord. What does he pray? My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because my association with material desires one after another, he is speaking for us. I was gradually falling into a blind well full of snakes, following the general populace. But your dear servant Srila Narad Muni kindly accepted me as his disciple and instructed me how to achieve this transcendental position. Therefore, my first duty is to serve him. How could I leave his service? Out of 18,000 shlokas from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada puts this shloka in his Jaladuta prayers. This is the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, because without this mood of understanding Srimad Bhagavatam, we cannot understand Srimad Bhagavatam. This is what our acharyas say. Because Tad Vijnanatam Sa Gurumeva Abhigachet. Srila Prabhupada often quotes this. Without serving a bona fide guru and a sadhu, we cannot understand the purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam. We may read it several times, time after time after time. But we cannot be, by serving a Mahabhagavat devotee is our only hope, is our own and only hope to gradually raise ourselves from being a conditioned devotee. And just as a summary, we saw the vision of an Uttamadhikari devotee. I'm sorry, I'm taking 2 minutes over. We'll quickly go through the summary. So we saw how the Lord is omnipotent and omniscient, and he is without faults, and he doesn't have a material form but has a spiritual form, and he is the greatest of all. He's self-sufficient and independent, and he fulfills everyone's desire also. And he's at the same time, even though he does so many wonderful things, he is always pure and he's uncontaminated. He's always in his transcendental state. And I'll stop here. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Guru Varga ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Am I audible?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhu. It was very, very nice. I really liked the entire session, especially the examples you took to explain each of these qualities of the Lord was very nice. Especially, I was very intrigued by the Bhagavatam example. I was just admiring how. Very, very interesting. Thank you so much for such a fascinating class. It was very crisp and clear.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you for the opportunity to read your purpose.
It's our fortune. We can open up the forum for questions and answers, and we want to have questions.
Hare Krishna ji, Vivek Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Prabhunath ki jai. So many points today you cover us and you take us in a Shidham Vrindavan Dham and all the Leelas Prabhuji and Vakreshwar Prabhuji's story, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Nityananda story. So many way you teach us that whatsoever mood to serve Srila Prabhupada, especially in our home, the deities, we have to offer them time to time, morning prasadam, afternoon prasadam, 4 o'clock fruits, and sayana. If we are not able to do a whole day kirtan, but at least one bhajan and kirtan front of our deities. नहीं तो एक बार हमने सुना था कि श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलराम सुभद्रा रानी went away from particular place. I forgot Sridham Vrindavandam. Please forgive me. And so they said that we cannot get the proper food from that home. So we offer prasadam and we take care of our deities and उनको अच्छी तरह 16 नामात प्रभु जी बहुत अच्छी तरह एक्सप्लेन किया. श्री राम वृंदावन धाम की स्टोरीज, जय जय नित्यानंदा, जय जय that Brahmana's wife moved to serve Lord Krishna and Srimati Shri Radha Rani, Lord Balrama. Hari Hari Gauranga Prabhu ji, koti koti dandavat pranam to your sincere seva. We learn so many things from your class. Every time, Prabhuji, very sincerely you prepare your PPT and perform with all of us. Koti Koti Dandavat Pranam. Shri Prabhupada Srila Gurudev ki jai, Gopinath ki jai. Thank you, Vivek Prabhu, for your association and
Thank
blessing.
you, Mataji. I'm just repeating whatever I'm hearing from senior devotees and other exalted acharyas. I don't have any realizations. Hare Krishna.
Asha Mataji.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I'm just new to ISKCON and Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. I actually had a question that I had read Swami Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. And as you mentioned here today, that God is Lord Krishna, or God is pure, flawless, formless. Okay, so in Bhagavad Gita as it is, it's written that the consciousness which we say I am is actually the contaminated consciousness, because we think we are the enjoyer, we are the doer, we are doing everything, we are the creator of everything. But Srila Prabhupada ji says that actually it's the Supreme Lord who is the creator and the enjoyer, and we are a part and parcel of that Supreme Lord. So my question is that when we understand this truth, does the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra, Maha Mantra, will eradicate or at least lessen the karmas that the body is going through? Because somewhere I also read that 51 years or 41 years or 31 years, whatever our age is, we think that we have done something in this life, in this 31 years of time, and we start asking God, why did you do this to me? Why am I suffering? Why this is happening to me? But Lord Krishna sees our past and our future, and he knows what has to be done for the present. So we are thinking about the past and thinking about what's going to happen next, what we did in the past. So does our body's karma get reduced, or maybe at least lessened to some extent, even if we don't expect that? But does this Maha Mantra help in that understanding, that who we are, why are we here, what is the purpose of our life, and who is the maintainer and creator of everything that is happening, and accepting that it is all his grace, and whatever is happening is one step he's taking closer to him. So does this consciousness, remaining in this Krishna consciousness, help us to go back home? That is not this body, but the soul going back home.
Okay, the last piece, I think it was total, until that point, it was one question, and then you took a diversion, Mataji. I'll try to just share what I understood from your question. So you were asking whether chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra will it eradicate all our past sins or whatever mistakes that we have committed. So
in this body, the body's mistakes.
Yeah. So I will directly quote from Srila Prabhupada's purport. I don't recall where he wrote, but I clearly remember he mentions that even for a new devotee who has just joined and just started chanting, I'm repeating, I can probably share in the group later if I try to find that source from Prabhupada's purport. He mentions even for a new devotee, As soon as that person starts chanting Hare Krishna and starts worshipping Krishna, Krishna takes charge. This is exactly he writes. Exactly he writes. That as soon as a person starts chanting and worships Krishna, Krishna is in charge, which means karma doesn't hold good. So it doesn't mean that we will never suffer after that. That should not be our understanding. Our understanding is that we are under the shelter of Krishna.
Yeah, so that's what I said, that, you know, if we are under the shelter of him, because he's the maintainer of everything what's happening. So when we accept that whatever is happening, it's his mercy and his grace, and whatever he's giving, it is just taking us one step closer towards him. So that staying in that consciousness, Krishna consciousness, and that is also his grace, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yes, Mataji. Yes, yes. Yeah. So it is true that our Krishna will take charge of our sufferings from that point when we surrender. But the problem is our tendency, because we are conditioned, we are conditioned living entities, meaning I may realize today, okay, today or tomorrow, maybe for a month or a year, I may have this realization. But reason I'm saying conditioned is because of our past conditioned nature, either our nature or due to influences around us, we can easily get influenced into, say, committing some sinful activities or committing some offenses. So that is the reason why we need guidance in approaching Krishna. Without spiritual guidance, after a point it is capped. We cannot progress further towards Krishna. Of course, chanting Hare Krishna helps. Doesn't mean that chanting Hare Krishna doesn't help us. But sincerely chanting Hare Krishna will actually give us realizations to go seek further within Krishna consciousness.
But I was just wondering, because somewhere I heard Amrendra Das Swamiji also saying that we are actually a part and parcel of him. So if he's flawless and if he's the divine consciousness, so we are actually a part of him. That means we are the smaller consciousness, right? So this body would be impure, but the consciousness that the body is holding, like, you know, that we are the spirits having the human body experience, if I'm not wrong. So in that case, it's already pious, it's already flawless, it's already divine. But I think the body is impure. So does the chanting and accepting the truth that he is the only maintainer and he is the only ultimate truth, and the body never existed, like actually it is there just because of his grace, whatever it is going through, it is going through the karmas of maybe how many births, we never know. So he knows what is good for us. So this understanding, will this understanding along with chanting help us to be in Krishna consciousness?
Yes, it will help, Mataji, but all I'm saying is,
Yeah.
this will all remain theoretical.
Yeah.
Because Krishna consciousness, in the beginning days, we will like it a lot, because we are actually seeing some transformations within us. We are chanting, we are feeling that the process is working. But the problem is, what will happen is, I'm telling out of my personal experience, so I'm just sharing, is that after a point, what will happen is, everything will remain theoretical. Because what will happen is, once we start chanting, all the bad tendencies, it is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a wonderful pastime of the Lord churning the milk ocean. You might have heard that pastime, maybe not in detail, but when we hear from the sadhus, we get so many realizations are shared by the sadhus, right? When the Lord actually, along with the demigods and the demons, they churn the milk ocean, they're actually churning for the nectar, which is kind of similar to how we are chanting. We are expecting something wonderful to happen overnight. But unfortunately, nothing is happening. They are getting poison. They're getting all sorts of things coming out of the ocean, right? So similarly, when we begin to chant over a period of time, all the bad propensities will start coming out. I'll feel more angry, greedy, lusty. But the problem is, if we don't have guidance, when we think that, oh, I'm in the process, I'm feeling safe, I know this is the right process, so I'm doing well, so I'm satisfied. If we don't have proper guidance, what will happen is, we will think that that's it. I have become a pure devotee. One disciple of Srila Prabhupada says it's called pure devotee syndrome, meaning thinking that I have achieved something in Krishna consciousness. It's a totally wrong understanding that we have. We need guidance. That's the reason why Krishna himself, you have read the Bhagavad Gita, Mataji. In the 4th chapter, he says that we need to approach a guru and render service unto him. And only then, we will progress further. Because what will happen is the guru, the same Bhagavad Gita that you read, he will explain the deeper purports or deeper explanations of the same Bhagavad Gita verse that you have read. How many ever times you have read?
No,
When we read
it's
about,
so
when we read also, we get some realizations. That is by the mercy of Krishna. But when we hear from a guru, right? By hearing from a guru, the same Hare Krishna Mahamantra that you are chanting, the same Mahamantra that we are chanting, we will want to chant better. That's what will happen. So whatever your question is not wrong, and whatever you mentioned is also not wrong. But all I'm saying is, after a point, the problem is our progress will be capped, meaning our progress towards the Supreme Lord will be stopped or checked. You can say checked. That's the word Srila Prabhupada uses in many of its purposes. It will be checked because we don't have the guidance, superior guidance coming through Guru, Sadhu. This word often you might have seen Srila Prabhupada use, Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Shastra is there, but how do we understand the Shastra, the purpose of the Shastra? We don't understand. Even though it is in English, even though it is in a language that we can understand, we don't understand the true inner deep meaning of those purports that are given. And we can understand only and only and only. That's what we ended with our presentation or discussion today. That only by hearing to an advanced devotee. By hearing to an advanced devotee, this chanting process and all the devotional activities that we are doing will take a different dimension.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true, Prabhuji. Because I think coming to ISKCON, coming to Hare Krishna, this is because as you said today in this today's class, that you said so well that God churns everything. Like He makes you sometimes. He takes everything from you. Probably it is because He wants you back home. So that's the reason sometimes He takes everything away from you. So I think He bringing me here into ISKCON is the only reason, I think, for me to get a guru, because rest everything He has taken away from me. So He has not kept anything for me. I can say nothing for me that I can say is mine. So probably that's the reason. So He has taken away everything. He has churned everything. Now only thing what is left is, I think He brought me Himself here. The connections that I got to come to ISKCON was something miraculous, which I never thought would happen. So I think it's God's grace that He has brought me here, probably to come under some guru, who can really, really take me back home. So I think, yes, and I'm humbled that I'm here today in your class also. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji, for sharing that. Yeah. So I've always heard this from many senior devotees. They've just said this one thing, Mataji. I always share this with my friends because I've heard it personally from senior devotees, that if we really want something in Krishna consciousness, if we really want to not be where we are, we have to sincerely pray to Srila Prabhupada. You said that Krishna has brought me by some divine arrangement to Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
If we simply desire and pray to Srila Prabhupada, whatever we want to happen within Krishna consciousness, it happens. It happens. And one of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, he mentions, whenever we go to the temple and take obeisances in front of the deities, or people take obeisances in front of the Prabhupada altar, right? We should pray from our heart. Whatever it is, pray from our heart. And Prabhupada actually listens.
Yeah, the Bhagavad Gita book also, the Bhagavad Gita as it is book was, I got it from God, actually. I never asked for it.
Yes, Mataji. So Krishna is definitely indicating things to you. So if you have the right intent and right desires, and pray to Srila Prabhupada, and by his mercy, everything will happen, Mataji. This is what I've heard. I'm just repeating what I'm hearing.
No, everybody says the same thing. God, my only intention, I don't even have an intention. I only say to Srila Prabhupada, Guruji, and also all the devotees, everybody. I always pray whenever I come in any class, in the morning or in the evening, in the afternoon, maximum. I try to attend every class of Bhagavatam, just because I want the soul to go back home. That's it.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. If there are no questions, we can end here, Mataji.
Sure, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you all so much.
Hare
for
Krishna,
joining.
Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the beautiful class and nice question and answers, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and thank you, Vivek Prabhu. It was a nice class, and it was nice to have you back. So we can end the call here. Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Sri Isopanishad ki Jai, His Grace Vivek Prabhu ki Jai.
Ki jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Koti Koti Dandat Pranam.
We can end, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.